All right, welcome back. So really quickly, I want to talk about game. All right, not to shout out to you. I saw you try to define game on Auntie B's platform when she was asking what is game. Right, I use the term game a lot when we're talking about relationships, and the reality is that there is some ambiguity that goes with game, and it really depends on who you're talking about or who you're talking to. It depends, when it comes to dating, relationship, and marriage. For me personally, I've taken the time to probably expand on it, but I'll tell you what I mean. This is not necessarily what everybody else will mean when they say game when it comes to dating, relationships, and marriage. Okay, and I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about it. Not if you can drop that if I don't know if you remember, if you can drop that definition you gave, while you were on Antibi show, that would be nice. So I can also use that, right? Um, Timilade, what happened to your Timilade? What happened to your DP? You're saying T, all right? See, listen. I'm seeing the comments here. Make sure you drop all these comments on the video when we get there. But let's talk about game real quickly. Okay. Um, I won't lie. I like Judy being dragged. Jesus, this year we no go grief for anybody. Team Anterita. The extra drama won't help. Chinye gets what I was saying. Yeah, it won't help. It won't help. But I'm not sure if they. It's gonna be rough for them. It's gonna be rough for Auntie Rita too. You know. Anyway, but anyway, so the game. Let's talk about the game. What I mean by game, if I was to use any one word to describe game, what I mean by game is skills. Yeah, skills, particularly. Okay. And sometimes we take this dating, relationship, and marriage thing too seriously. Sometimes we take it too seriously. Okay. Some people might interpret game as, oh, now so you're playing games with people's hearts. No, that's manipulation, and manipulation never works long term. Okay, manipulation will work against you long term. You might game people, quote unquote, manipulate a person into doing something, but if it's not really coming from a place of free will, it's going to backfire. Okay. So when I say game, it must always involve some level of free will from the other party. Okay. And if you remember when Steve the Dean was here as our special guest during the launch of the number one red flag, he did talk a lot about free will. Okay. And I agree with him 99% of whatever he says whenever he says game. Okay. Game is skill set. Okay. Particularly when you see whatever we're talking about as part of the game of life. If you see life as a game, it's a little bit easier for you to understand the need to acquire the necessary skill set. When you see it as an entitlement, right? When you see it as my right. You know how I laugh hard when people say my right. I just laugh. I'm like, this one thinks this is right. I just laugh, because there's no such thing, especially when it comes to dating, relationship, and marriage. There's literally no such thing. I know you signed what you thought was a contract. This is a business contract. Treat it like a business contract. She stopped having sex with you, so it's your right. So you should just shame her. He stopped doing what he used to do. He used to love and buy me flowers. And then the way you process that in your head is that it's a right. Auntie, boss, you go collect.
Sorry, oh.
It's not gonna work. How do I know? Just look around you. It doesn't work. Okay. So we're talking about you now. We're not talking about the other, not you, lo. We're talking about you as a person, right? Not the other person. We're talking about you as an individual, right? You see, whatever I'm suggesting to you, you practiced it. You practiced it while you were while you were what do you call it, when you were dating this person, right? You wanted to impress them. You were not coming from a place of entitlement, right? Maybe you weren't thinking intentionally you were trying to impress them, but the last thing you want to do is not impress them. You want them to see you and feel like you dressed up, you smell good, you can't wait to see them, right? It doesn't matter what side of the gender you are. That was what it was when you first met that person, right? You were interested like that, right? So the point is that you were not coming from a place of entitlement, right? So now, after you don't collect woto, as I see finish don't enter, you seen everything, taking everything for granted as a default. It's not intentional. It's just that when you keep seeing this person every day, naturally you start taking things for granted. Complacency will creep in, right? It takes what I call game to be self-aware that, hey, see finish don't enter this thing. Let me be intentional, particularly with respect to emotional intelligence when it comes to building this romance, because I do want it to last a long time. Now, that's easier said than done, because life is happening. You're going to work. All this stuff is happening, right? But you are aware enough to say, I gotta take this seriously. But it's easier when you gamify it. So if you look at even apps for the phones and all this stuff, right, and all the application they are building out, there was one point, I don't know, about 10 years ago. Some of you might not know. I don't know. I'm a computer engineer by trade, right? Project manager, computer engineer, engineering management. That's what my discipline is. Okay, all right. When they started designing apps, right, for smartphones, okay, one of the biggest part of the whole thing is to gamify, to make it seem like, to make it to basically improve the usability of these different apps, because it's a very competitive marketplace, right? So I know we don't want to see dating and relationship and marriage as a marketplace. That is precisely what it is. You have 8 billion people in this motherfucker, right? So there's always someone, something, someone, principalities, power, you fight not the flesh, that's competing for the attention of your partner, right? Now, you can operate from a place of fear, which is, I don't want them to take them away from me. We don't want that, because that will backfire too. You cannot sustain that, right? But you can also understand that when you work on yourself, most people don't work on themselves. They don't, right? So when you work on yourself, you become top 3% of mankind. You will be hot in this marketplace. And I'm not talking about looks or anything like that, okay? You'll be hot. They'll just want to be a part of your life. They will pop the question at some point. They want you to pop the question if you're a man, because there's something that's subconsciously happening. They know they don't want to mess around and miss out on spending a lifetime with this person, because you've been working on yourself. Okay, so even if that doesn't happen, you don't really miss out on anything, because you're working on yourself, and that's part of the game. So game is skill set when it comes to romance, right? Thinking about these things as skill, not, no, that's not my right. Oh no, so that's my right, right? I got cheated. When something happens within a romantic context, and the first thing you're thinking about is that person cheated you, that is one of the signals that you lack game, because probably you haven't been paying attention for a while, right? See finish enter. You've been taking that person for granted. They've been taking you for granted. They wanted to hit their cake and have it too. They probably lack game too, because if they didn't, they would basically be using their seduction skills to make sure that the relationship stays as wholesome as possible throughout, not just short term but long term. Okay, so when you see it as a game, you understand two things about games, right? Not the game that you're playing with somebody's heart, but the game that you understand about how life works. You understand it, and you understand that you cannot win any game by playing defense only. You can't win any game like that, right? And you cannot win any game by playing offense only either, right? So there's some things you need to do to defend yourself. There's some things you need to be doing, not to do. Doing is an ongoing thing. It's a continuous tense. There's some things you need to continue to do to defend yourself. Yes, even from a selfish place, okay? Because when you take care of that person, that's also indirectly taking care of yourself. That's part of the game, right? But when you don't understand that game, you're doing self as a form of absolute, right? And you're like self, and it's you against that other person, and you're trying to play that game inside of a romantic context. It's going to backfire. And that's what most people do. And that's when they're competing against each other. And when I say competing against each other, it's not always overt. Is that what they call it? It's not always covert or overt, right? It sometimes it's wild, like somebody's just outrightly calling you their enemy. Sometimes it's very subtle, passive aggressive moves, right, that you might not even be aware you're doing, right? But when you understand that these things are there, either you're aware or not, that self-awareness is part of game, right? So in any game, there's defense, there's offense, right? Offense is the first step of offense is that person, I gotta make sure they're on my team, right? And we're fighting against the world, right? Defense, right, is together we're defending, right? We're defending all of these principalities that are actively pushing against the survival of your relationship over time. That's game. So a lot of people think about game as the game that you have when you got that girl. No, you also need game to keep her or to keep him over a period of time, right? Part of that game is seduction skills, and I mean ethical seduction skills, by the way, right? Part of that game is your self-awareness, right? Your self-development, right? That's all part of it. Your emotional intelligence, remaining a student of emotional intelligence. Your social skills, right? Oh yeah, the social skills plays a role, right? You'll be like, well, there's nothing wrong with me talking to my ex. Like, that's a social skill issue. For you, when you're thinking about moral compass and standards and stuff, maybe on paper, technically, there's nothing wrong. But from the way society sees it, can something be wrong? Never mind how you feel about it. Are you able to process or comprehend what I'm saying at the social intelligence level, right? That's game. All right. So game ultimately comes down to skills, and it's skills. You have to think of relationship as skills. Okay. All of it is a privilege. It's not a matter like if you're moving from a place of entitlement, something is your right. They should not, or you're overly obsessed with the moral standards involved in relationship. You will find out sooner or later that human beings actually don't give a shit outside of anything. They don't give a shit about anything outside of their feelings. That's the reality, including you. I'm sorry. They don't. When they get caught up in their feelings, you start hearing stuff like that. Okay? They will justify the BS too. They will use logic to literally justify it. They will actually use the Bible to justify the BS. You gotta be careful. So that's what I mean by game. Think of relationship as come from a place of skillful. You're being skillful. You need skills. Okay? A lot of time when you get hurt in relationship, it's natural for you to think that person is now your enemy. That is part of the signs that you lack game. It's okay. You're not alone. Most people do. Okay? All right. But if you look at it and say, I missed something here. This is an opportunity for me to learn. I'm hurt. I'm crying. Boo, 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 boo. Right. But there's something that I needed to learn. Right. It's easier to really accept that there's something for you to learn when you think of it as game. Because when you get into any game, the first thing you ask, what's the rules? What are the rules? Right? You want to know what the rules are, and you want to play skillfully, and you want to win. So if you want to win in a romantic context now, obviously that means you together with your romantic partner, you're winning together. So there should never be a space for we're competing with each other, either in a subtle way, subconsciously. That's the first thing you should be looking for. Where are we disagreeing? Some lame person is going to tell you that, you are the victim. Don't allow. You see how it's discombobulated now, right? You bring the word victim into that equation. We shouldn't be talking about game. We're talking about regular relationships where you are bossing each other and you don't understand. We're not talking about extreme situations where it's clearly you are a victim. And if you feel like a victim, there's one little thing you can do that can make it easier for everyone. You can honorably bow out of the relationship. That is part of game. All right, so I hope that helps. If you have any more questions about game, so when people say you don't need no game in relationship, they sound stupid. That's how stupid they sound. They're literally saying I can go in there, it's my right, they should do what is right, and that's literally not understanding how life works. That's why there's only so much I can do. I can only come here and do a show from time to time, so that's what I have for today. But if you have any additional questions around game, I will love to address it as time goes on. But Chinya said, I see game as skills. Absolutely. Yvette, welcome. She says, late, but we'll catch on replay. Good to see you, Yvette. Toby, hello. She says, yeah, I agree. The ability to influence, draw people or things towards you. I guess in line of today's topic, Prophet TB Joshua can be described as the master gamer, regardless of your opinion about him. Yeah. And we can still call it evil, and because I keep telling you, even the idea of game, especially seduction skills, is a double-edged sword. It's neither good nor bad. You can absolutely use it to do evil, and you shouldn't, right? But the enemy is going to use it if you don't know what is happening, and you will just go around boo-hoo. You'll be falling for everything spiritual every time, and you're not realizing that somebody is using game on you. Ouch. Yeah, human beings are not anybody's mate. No, they're not. But yeah, that's game right there. Game is so, and also, by the way, it needs context always. So nobody should say something is a game and it's not and something that it needs to be applicable to your personal story. Right? So nobody can come and say that's that thing, just because you're married, you don't have game, or just because you decide to stay single, you don't have game. No, that's not how it works. It has to, you need to apply context. Context matters. Part of game is that context matters. Nobody should say, oh, because you chose to go this route or because something looked this way, Now, obviously, I can have an opinion. But usually that's within context. I might be having a conversation about Yule, and I can say Yule Edochie lacks game, and you come and say, that guy who backed that big watermelon, you say he lacks game. I say, yeah, he lacks game. All right. Now we can have a conversation so we can unpack all the context, but that's my opinion. So it's okay for people to have opinion around that as well. But if I was to bring it down to one thing, if you ever hear me say game, what I mean is skills. Particularly skills. Now, skills with respect to what? To the results you're looking to achieve. Okay? So if somebody is looking to become a polygamist and this one is looking to become a monogamist, right? That's two different games, right? The rules will be slightly different, right? At the grand scheme of things, there's some principles across the board when it comes to game. When it comes to game, the number one rule is you need to know what you're doing. Skills. Right? So you might hear me sometimes say that person does not know what they're doing. Sometimes you're giving them too much credit than they deserve by saying they're being evil. Sure, they're evil. What they did is clearly evil. What else can you pull out of what is going on? What would you learn for yourself so you can learn how to navigate what we call life and love? Right? Outside of just that person is evil. You really don't gain anything from spending all your time pointing fingers. That's also part of game. All right, hit that like button. 25 people are yet to like this video. How do you guys want me to beg you like this video? Please now, please hit the like video. So thank you not to help me beg them. I beg all of you now. All right, now let's get into the real story of the day. I don't know how we're gonna do this. This story is such a huge story. I don't know how we're going to do it in 1 hour, but let's, after all, they did the whole thing in 3 hours. So, but honestly, I want to know what your opinions are about this story. But right now, just do me a favor, hit that like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications, so that you're notified when we do go live. I'll be right back.
Girl, it's your love that I've been missing. I miss all your hugs, your touching and kissing. Make love on the floor, the couch in the kitchen. One loving up,